So let's kind of go through some of these questions up here. Thoughts about last week's stuff on idolatry, hard idolatry, anyways. What are your thoughts?
It was hard to pick something
It was hard to pick something.
that was my heart idol, because examining yourself doesn't always happen.
Yeah.
It'd be a little uncomfortable at times.
It wasn't uncomfortable, it was hard to
Was it hard to pick just one or hard to recognize one?
recognize.
Okay, gotcha. So it could be some things, but not sure if it is one or not. Okay, gotcha. And Peter, you were saying, can I make you a little uncomfortable?
Well, especially when you're trying to pick it out in your partner. It's a little, it can be a
Okay.
little bit. When you're picking out, because part of it you have
Yeah.
to pick one out for yourself and for your partner.
Yeah. That can be a little uncomfortable.
For sure.
Especially
Okay.
if they don't recognize it. And
Right.
Yeah.
Then all of a sudden it's conference room time.
Yeah, exactly, right? See, I was really just forcing you into the conference table activity is what I was trying. Yeah. No, it can't. That's tough. That is a tough thing. And I think I mentioned it towards the end of our time, but a book that I will take every couple through in marriage counseling is called When Sinners Say I Do. And chapter 7 is called The Surgeon, the Scalpel, and the Spouse in Sin. And the whole point behind that chapter is how do you respond when you see sin in your spouse? Because that is the issue. It is uncomfortable. It is hard. But as brothers and sisters in Christ, we are called to point that out if the other person doesn't see it. So it can make things uncomfortable. It was a little hard to decide what else. Yeah.
I think sometimes it's hard to admit that things are heart idols.
Yeah.
You put a lot of time, like for work, like I put a lot of time and effort into work.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes when I realize it's taking away from other things, it's hard to realize that can sometimes be a heart idol.
Yeah, absolutely. And on that point, I would say not everything is like it's out to just wreck you, right? Sometimes it can be as simple as a slide this way. It's in its right order right here. It's underneath God. It's underneath, once you're married, it's underneath your spouse. And then just it somehow slips this way and takes the place of either God or your spouse. And it is hard, especially if you've gotten a degree, if you've poured your time and effort and maybe money into things, and if you're getting your accolades at work, like you're doing a great job, there's just, I know when I sit down with Pastor Steve and Pastor Jim here, and we do an annual review, and they tell me, here's all the things we love what you're doing, here's some things we want you to work on, and we've taken a look at your pay, and here's how we want to compensate you. And they always end with this statement: this doesn't mean we want you to do more. And I love that statement because I feel the pressure to do more, right? At the expense of my wife and my kids and things like that. So I very much appreciate that because of that very thing. Yeah. Pastors, by the way, very hard time with that concept right there. The pastors, when they retire, they often retire not just from a job, but they're retiring from their identity. I am Pastor Ben, right? And so sometimes pastors go into a pretty deep depression. And I'm sure that happens with other jobs too, but definitely with pastors. Okay, what else? Anything else? Yeah.
I guess something else along the lines of that, like I know a big thing now is like self-care.
Yeah.
Learning when you need to take care of yourself, but then when that starts to become an idol, or like, for example, I like to watch Netflix before I go to bed. But I don't need to watch like 5 episodes.
Yeah.
Right? So like all of a sudden it turns from being something that like relieves your stress to almost it takes over.
Yeah.
Like time that I could have been reading my Bible or praying or doing other things that would please God more.
Yeah.
So finding a balance between self-care and then something that kind of overtakes you, I guess.
For sure, yeah. And so there's 2 sentences from last week. I think it can help figure out there and help figure out what's an idol and what's not, right? The 2 sentences, I will sin in order to get, fill in the blank, right? Or I will sin if I don't get, fill in the blank. Those can be helpful in identifying. 4 other statements, by the way, that can be helpful in that identifying process. I need this, I want that, so those can be helpful. I must have, and then at least in America, I have the right to. Right? I have the right to. Gun control is big right now, right? I have the right to that. I had a good discussion with somebody the other day. If the government were to decide to take away guns, abolish the Second Amendment, do Christians have to follow that? Ooh, that's a good one. That will require a conference table on some levels, just FYI. So yeah, and I made that comment as somebody who has a concealed weapons permit, so it's not like I'm anti-guns or anything like that. Yeah.
One question that I like to ask is it a lust of the flesh or a leading of the spirit?
Can you unpack that a little bit more? I like that.
Well, I think there's things that we want to do in life, and we want to do them. Let's pick something that, is a choice thing. Maybe you want to get a nose piercing.
Okay.
And I'm not saying whether it's right or wrong or anything, but just as an example, when you say, why do you want to do that? Has God led you to do that? Or is that just something that you want because you think it's pretty and you just want it?
Yeah.
And so it's a good thing to evaluate, the reason why we do a lot of things in our life is, am I lusting in the flesh, or is God leading me to do that?
Yeah.
And it can rule out a lot of choices.
My barbecue grill's in the lust side.
So, or leading by the Spirit, is that what you said?
Yeah,
Okay.
leading off the spirit, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So just for everybody's benefit here, how do you make a distinction between lust of the flesh or leading of the Spirit? And I don't know if the nose piercing would be a good example for that, or...
I guess you could look at its impact on other people.
Okay, yeah.
Is that bringing blessing to other people?
Yeah.
And wanting to do that, or am I purely doing that for my own selfish?
Yeah.
Why do I want to do it?
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a book right now, I'm not going to remember the name of it, but it deals with the conscience. And on that very note, the authors in there discuss things like tattoos, right? Nose-piercing tattoos kind of fall in the same category, where we have the freedom to do that. Now, two of the authors in there, because of their context, which is they minister in other countries, they have decided I'm not going to get a tattoo because that would inhibit my ability to share the gospel. Now, they're completely free. They realize Scripture would not condemn them from getting a tattoo, but it might impede their ability to share the gospel in the context that they currently minister in. So that would be, I think that's making that decision there. I like that a lot. Lust of the flesh, just because I'm thinking in mind 1 Corinthians 2, 15 through 17. I think Pastor Stevie, did he mention that in his sermon today? Oh, yeah. Okay. You never know who's listening to what you're saying, right? Anyways, it talks about, I don't know if that was intended for him here, or if that was just a to some, we're going to take that as a yes, okay? Yeah, it was just the Spirit speaking. We all heard it, right? Okay. Otherwise, I've got some issues. So, but in there, John talks about the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the pride of life. So, if it's a lust of the flesh, then I think Scripture would say stay away from that. Any thoughts on that? I'm thinking out loud right now. So I'm inviting you into the discussion in my brain.
Sorry, can you repeat the statement? Just so I can...
So, lust of the flesh. Would there be any time, and Angela, maybe I'm going off in a direction you didn't intend to go into, but for lust of the flesh, do you think there would ever be a time where it would be okay to go down that road?
Well, I think it always goes to motivation.
Yeah.
Why you doing something, because things can appear to the lust of the flesh. When you're single and you are desiring the opposite sex, okay, and then when you're married, then it's appropriate to desire one another. It's difficult to shift from that mentality. One is flesh and now one is.
Sorry.
A good desire.
Sorry. You got a class going on in here. Thanks. Okay. Yes. Lust of my flesh and the leading of the spirit. Which one is? Yeah. So can you say that one more time? I'm sorry.
So I was just talking about, you know, at times the lust of the flesh can be inappropriate for the same action.
Oh, yes.
Within a marriage.
Yes.
Can be appropriate where you can desire one another.
Yeah.
But if you have that outside of marriage, it's wrong.
Absolutely. So yeah, so driving it into the context of this then, this could actually lead towards physical intimacy, whereas this would want you to not lead in that. Am I tracking somewhat there?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I'm not sure.
No?
Well, I'm not sure. I mean, I think in one context, it's lust of the flesh outside of marriage.
Yeah.
In the other context, it could be a leading of the spirit. I mean, and it could be totally appropriate as God's design. The challenge is, I think sometimes that being able to discern that, because sometimes you can get married and feel guilty, or one partner can feel guilty for their marital intimacy, and that is not biblical at that point when it was. Does that make sense?
Yeah, does everybody track? I know exactly where you're at. Is everybody tracking where Brad is talking here?
Well, like years of indoctrination, and within a 2-hour period, it suddenly just
Yeah.
switches.
Yeah. For sure.
Totally.
That can be, yes, absolutely. I can feel guilty, 2 hours after I do for something that 2 hours before I do, I would have actually been a sin. And just that switch doesn't always just happen. Yeah, absolutely. Is that where you were? Maybe not.
You asked about it. Can the lust of flesh be something that can be positive? And I say, well, that's where before marriage, intimacy is sin, and yet after marriage it is sin.
Yeah.
So that was my example.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure. And I think this does go after motivation. Why am I doing what I'm doing? And that heart idol diagram, that's what that's driving at. More than what we're doing, why are we doing what we're doing, right? I can run 5 miles a day for the right motivation. I can run 5 miles a day for the wrong motivation. And the motivation makes the difference in whether something is sinful or not. Right? Okay, good.
So like a lot of things, it's context.
Say what?
I said, so like a lot of things, it's context.
Yeah. Yep. So drive it this way, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and I think the thing of it is that a lot of times in these areas, it seems sometimes to be very close to the godly thing to do. Like, I'm being frugal, but I'm being selfish. Or I may have more of a gift of teaching, and so in a situation I overteach with my kids and they check out, or with my spouse. You've told me this a dozen times, honey. And so it's more about me than it is about the person I'm interacting with.
Yeah.
And so, but you can easily justify it because you can, from your perspective, it seems like, hey, that's,
Yeah, absolutely.
working extra work or.
Yeah. Yep. Probably in any of these chapters that we've discussed, you can go sinful with it. Yeah. Okay. Anything else? I don't want to cut this heart idolatry thing short. Do you think it gives you enough to talk about as a couple? If you were meeting with me individually, we would identify for sure at least one heart idol or one area of struggle in your life. Because that's going to show up, right? The whole dating scene, you're putting your best forward. They're putting their best forward, or courtship, or whatever you want to call it. And then you move into engagement, where maybe you move the curtain back just a little bit more. You are not showing up in all your morning glory, right? So that's what I mean when I say we would work hard at finding those areas where you struggle, because it removes the uncomfortableness just a little bit, and it works on the rosy-colored glasses just a little bit, right? Does that make sense when I say rose-colored glasses? Okay, good. All right. Anything else? Heart idolatry? No? Okay. It'll pop up. Trust me. And you know where I'm at when it pops up. So, okay. What are you going to do to ensure you have community in your marriage? Because this is big. I think this is huge. Community. And Canyon Hills believes this is huge.
I think getting involved in the church closer, at a deeper level than just Sunday service.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. If you go to Canyon Hills, your Sunday morning church service cannot be your community. Why would I say that?
It's giant.
It's giant. It is huge. Right? You can show up and worship God and not have a single person know who you are. Right? So it's your Sunday morning church worship here cannot be your community. Right? So Canyon Hills has provided what to help with community? Life groups, small groups, whatever you want to call it. Now, if you're in a much smaller church, different context, right? You might not have to be involved at a life group like what we have here. There are other churches that, sometimes Sunday morning, like adult Sunday school, those become community. Sometimes, there's all kinds of different things. But community is what you need to be involved in. So I heard getting involved more than just your Sunday morning worship. Okay, good. So let's bring it down a little bit. What are you going to do to ensure you have community in your marriage?
Reprioritize.
Okay.
Like, it might not be a priority at the moment.
Yeah.
We all have other things going on too. And
yeah.
So I think making it, and it kind of went with like the message today where he said, to reprioritize things in your life and to make being a part of a community something important, right? Loving God first and most. So that should be on the top of our priority list.
Yeah.
And so I guess, especially when you bring two lives together, two different churches, two different beliefs, or whatever it is, kind of coming and making it a priority.
Yeah, absolutely. So reprioritize, and along those same notes, maybe even regroup. If you're in a life group that you've always been involved in, right, it might be time to regroup, right, and have a group that is yours, not just yours singular, right, but yours plural. Okay. All right. What else?
Find a place to serve together.
Yeah, that's my other thing that I have down is, and we'll get to that slide in just a minute. But to minister together somewhere, to serve somewhere together. So I can only speak from the Canyon Hills context. I know not everybody in here goes to Canyon Hills, but what are some places to serve together as a couple at Canyon Hills?
The food bank.
The food bank, absolutely. Yep. Fit, absolutely. Right. First impression team. What else?
Leading a small group.
Yeah, leading a small group. Okay. So not only being a part of one, but leading one. Okay. What else?
Youth ministry.
Youth ministry. Yeah, both senior high and junior high. Okay. What else? I just want to ring that thing with every drop.
Music.
Music. Okay, good. Yeah, if you're musical, yes, good. I am not. So yes, I can't sing and clap and I can't do all that.
You can be the sound man.
I don't even know if I could do that. I can go in there and say, "Oh, this is beautiful," and that's about it. So yeah. Okay. So her music. Did they hear something else?
Is the security team part
Yeah,
of that?
absolutely. Well, that if you both are into security, right on. Or if you're both,
I was talking about the security team at Canyon Hills.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, no, and what I'm thinking here, ministry-wise, is what can you do together?
Oh, together. Okay.
Yeah, that would be that would be community where you're involved with other people dumping into your life. So I would say yes to security if you're both security-minded, like that. Yeah. Okay. What else?
Food bank.
Yeah, food bank.
I'll do it.
Yep. Yeah.
Nursery.
Nursery. Absolutely, nursery.
I just have a question. So what's your opinion? I guess you're kind of sharing that you want us to be together, but like, if we had different areas we wanted to serve in different places, would you just recommend for the first couple of years of marriage to do something together?
Yeah.
Or try to find that thing together? And also life groups, would you recommend that we do a life group together versus having like my women's group and he has his men's group?
Yes. So I'm going to kind of tackle those in different areas.
the
So
connection question.
if you can serve together, I think that's the best option.
Okay.
If you can serve at the same time, but in different areas, like here's best, better, that would be in the better category. If you can serve somewhere around the same time, then I would say that's in the good category. Not serving, that's in the don't go into that realm of not serving. But if you can serve at the same time, serve in the same ministry. I think that's how I would bump things up that way. So right now, in the spot where my wife and I are at, we cannot serve at the same time. So right now, she is the nursery service coordinator over in the church over there. I'm right here. We obviously can't serve together. On Wednesday nights, somebody has to watch our kids while she is serving as the senior high flock leader. So we can't do that together. Now, in the previous church where I was at, we served together. I was the youth pastor, and she worked right alongside me. So there's all of that is on the good side. Serving at the same time, serving together. For the first year of your, or first couple years of your marriage, I would highly encourage you, if you can serve together, that would just be outstanding. Because there are lots of things pulling on your time. And so if you can do things together, I think that's best. Now, life group. I would say, because you probably have a little bit more control over that than where you serve, be in a life group together. That would be my encouragement. If you have extra time to be in another life group, an additional one, then that's where I would encourage you. Now, hopefully you heard me say I would encourage that. Is there anything sinful with you being in a life group and your spouse being in another life group? There's nothing sinful about that. I just think it's most beneficial when you're together, because it doesn't divide your time. You'll find out soon enough how many things are vying for your time that will try and split you apart. So fight for staying together as often as you can. Good question. Any other areas of ministry you can think of? There's a big one you guys have missed.
Ushering?
You could, usher, yeah.
Prayer?
Prayer, absolutely. Yeah, prayer team.
Premarriage.
Yes, there we go. Something in the area of counseling. Yes, you guys could do that together. We have an awesome counseling program here. No, absolutely. But just start thinking about all the different ways that you could serve together, and try and maximize and utilize the time that you're at church. Go to church together and then serve together, kind of at that same time, instead of dividing and not being around each other a whole lot. All right, Hannah, you're going to be going into the chapel system as a Navy wife, right? So that will be a little bit of a challenge for you, because my dad, as a Navy chaplain, I know what that system is going to be like. So you'll have to get a little bit more intentional, and probably life group or small group for you might not even be connected to the chapel. It might be connected to a group of Christian women whose wives are all on deployment at the same time. So getting involved in each other's lives, though, will have to be intentional. Yeah. All right. Anything else from this last week on community? So the two statements that stood out to you, I want to hear from this chapter. I feel like this chapter in particular isn't as huge because this is a pillar. Like, this is the air we breathe here. In other churches, this is brand new material. Believe it or not, there are some churches that just, I don't know if you guys know this. Martin Luther, you guys know who Martin Luther, not Martin Luther King, but Martin Luther, right? He was anti-small groups. So this would be brand new information for Martin Luther. He probably would write 95 Theses and pound them on our door. Right? So, two statements that stood out from this chapter for you.
One of the ones I put was you need community, not just for yourself as an individual, church.
Yeah.
And I thought for us, like, kind of waking up on Sunday morning, maybe you're tired or you don't, you know, you'd rather do something else. You know, it's not about me, you know, being tired or him being tired. It's like we need to describe marriage.
Yeah.
Putting that before our personal law.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep, good call.
I was thinking about the body of Christ, and just how that scripture in 1 Corinthians, and it was talking about how every part of the body is important, and if we're not in community, then we're, not only are we not being fed and letting other people speak into our lives and scriptures speak into our lives and God, but we're taking that away for what he wants us to do for others.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think it's a both. I'm here to get, to receive, but I'm also here to give. Right? Yeah, and that's why I know many of our small groups here, they do the mutual ministry time. Is anybody in a life group that does mutual ministry? Okay, so the men break up and the women break up, and that's where you really share those struggles of what's going on. It takes a little getting used to. But once you're there, once there's transparency and vulnerability, I think most people say, I don't really want to go back the other way. So it's hard to get there. But okay, other statements that stood out. Yeah.
I wrote down that Jesus is building his church, and the way he has constructed it is both for his glory and our good.
Yeah.
And I just kind of emphasize the importance of community, and we weren't designed to do it on our own.
Yeah.
We were designed to both be with others and be with God.
Yep. Yeah. And God uses others, right?
Yeah.
To grow us. Yeah.
I thought it was interesting when they said, I personally encourage young couples to do faithfulness to the church is attending 48 out of 52 Sundays a year.
Yeah.
That was kind of like a slap in the face, punch in the gut a little bit.
Yeah.
To really realize that it's important.
Yeah.
You know, and like obviously, you know, they give you 4 grace weeks, right, for whatever it is. But again, I think it kind of comes back to the making it a priority.
Yeah.
You know, kind of that same idea we talked about with that discussion we got about like sports on Sundays and like where do you make it a priority in your life, or how do you find a way to fit it in? So I thought that was kind of interesting to put a number to it, I guess.
Yeah, and that does objectivity, right? I mean, like, okay, so 4 weeks a year, you can be sick, right? Kind of get the idea. But man, making church a priority, and I remember growing up, that was not the case for me. You know, and now I told you my dad was a chaplain in the Navy, and so there were some Sundays, I remember we were just going to do a home church. And it was Dad giving a little devotion, and that was about it. But that is not what God designed church to be, right? And I know for us, for the Marshalls, when we're on vacation, we seek a church to go to while we're on vacation. And we've gone to Whistler now every year for 7 or 8 years, and there is Whistler Community Church, and we see people that we recognize year after year, even though it's only one service a weekend. But that's where we go. And my kids know that. They don't argue with me on that one. They might argue with each other on the way there, but they're not arguing with me about going to church. So now I do want to throw on the other side of that, careful of not making it a legalistic work as well. And that's that. So like we all have our tendencies one way or another. And my tendency is we don't miss church because that's what Christians do kind of thing. And that can be just as like, maybe falling into the ditch on this side. But I do agree. His point, though, is make church a massive priority. Make it a priority. Yeah. What else? Anything else? Yeah.
I like the statement in the book about being a good example isn't about doing the right things. It's about your heart and the condition of your heart.
Yep.
Because I think for me, growing up, being one of the older siblings, I was the second oldest. It was always like, you got to be a good example for your siblings. So do this and do this and do this and do this. And it wasn't so much on who you were, but how you acted.
Yeah.
So I think that was a
Yep.
very profound statement. Maybe it shouldn't have been, but it was.
No, I agree. Yeah. Especially if you feel that weight of people watching you all the time. it can get you to do the right thing, but that won't last forever. So, yeah. Anything else?
I like how it said living in community also encourages our service, and it's not just about what we want in the me monster concept.
Yeah.
When you have a community, it's an accountability piece. Like with a church this big, it's easy to go to church and kind of slip out, and no one ever does.
For sure, absolutely. Yeah, and that is, I mean, I have to take people at their word, because one of our requirements here for counseling is that you're going to church each week. Somebody be lying to me. I don't know. Now, I do see most people that I'm counseling at some point on Sunday. That doesn't mean I see everybody. And so I might say, hey, I didn't see you in church on Sunday. Oh, yeah, here's the points. Da-da-da-da-da-da. Yeah, you were here. Or you watched it online. But either which way, yeah. Okay. So some scriptures that you decided to put down on note cards? Or whatever memory system you're
2
using.
Corinthians 12:12.
Okay, which says?
It talks about community and the importance of pretty much what this chapter discussed.
Yeah, okay. Okay, good. Anybody else?
Yeah, the Hebrews 10:23-25.
Yeah. And encouraging one another to what? What two things? You remember?
Obviously, I didn't memorize.
No, that's okay. We can work together as a group. Encouraging each other to go toward. Maybe that's the. If I use the word to, it might mess you up.
Well, just not neglecting the meat, but encouraging one another. All the more as you see the day drawing near.
Yeah. Yep. And I realized the ESV says stir one another up toward love and good deeds. Right? Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Even or all the more as we see the day. And in my Bible, day is in capital D. Right? So what day would that be?
Jesus coming back.
Jesus coming back. Yeah. Absolutely. That day. All right. And any other scriptures that stood out to you?
I like 2 Corinthians 1, 3-4, which talks about how the things that you struggle with or work through with God, you can use those things to comfort others who are also going through the same thing.
Absolutely. Just the idea that we are all sufferers. I mean, that is, we are all worshipers and we're all sufferers. I mean, those are some identity type things. And so going to church, realizing I can go to church to comfort people. Absolutely. That's a big verse for us over here in the counseling department. I want all of my counselors starting with where do you suffer, not starting with where do you sin. Because we are all sufferers, and that needs to be acknowledged and ministered to. So, any other verses? All right. Well, I just had a few things, suggestions for community. Number one, worship together. I would want you to hear that from me. Make sure that you attend Sunday morning service together at the same church, during the same service, right? I run into more couples who it's kind of like, no, this is what I prefer, and this is what I prefer, and so I'm going to go to this church, I'm going to go to this church. And I would encourage you, worship together at the same church, right? And that might mean having a conference table about what church are you going to go to. I would also encourage this. This is kind of beyond this class. Have your family worship at the same church. I run into parenting issues where kids are allowed to go to other churches. And that seems to create more disunity than it creates unity in a family. Yeah.
Do you mean family like future children we will have, or like parents and...
Oh, future children
Okay.
you will have, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, if you can talk your parents into going to the same church, or if you want to go to their church, I think that's outstanding. But I'm thinking more of when you have kids.
I was just thinking that was going to be like a whole nother conference table thing.
Oh, yeah. No. Yeah, no. Hey, Mom, Dad, I got something to talk to you about. Yeah. Brad.
You might want to expand on that. I guess the thing about community is that sometimes we think about what's good for me, but as you get married, you also have to think about, is this church good for my
Yeah,
spouse?
absolutely.
And then is this church good for my kids? It actually gets more complicated. That equation gets bigger and bigger.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you want to speak to that, because I think
That is a great,
yeah.
I'm glad that you said that. And here's where I will gulp. Because I want you to hear me loud and clear. I am unified in every way here with everybody that I work with at Canyon Hills, okay? Where my wife and I differ in preference is in the area of worship. Okay, so I'm saying that, it's on video, somebody's going to hear it, and all of our worship guys know this is where I'm most comfortable. My posture, like this, singing, with my voice. But if they ask me to do something with my hands, either clap or raise them, right, I'm moving out of my comfort zone now into things that, one, I am not musically equipped to do, right? Nor do I feel comfortable doing that. So my preference is what in theological circles would be more high church. Now, high church, that sets up like so there's a low church. No. That's not it at all. It's just there is like a more traditional style that would be hymns, right? Having a hymnal in your hands, and with music there and things like that's my preference. I will never. I shouldn't say that. I cannot foresee a time in which I would ever be called to a church like that, because my wife does not prefer that at all. Now, if you were to talk to her about that, it has a lot to do with her upbringing and the churches that she grew up in that were, for a large part, unbiblical. But they had that style of music, right? And so for her, that's a struggle. She loves Canyon Hills. And I am glad that she loves, and I love Canyon Hills. I'm just talking about preference here. But if it were switched, right, and my wife did not like it here at all, I seriously might have to consider my call to be a pastor here at Canyon Hills. And I think, Brad, that's what you're touching on somewhat. As you get married, right, you do have to consider the preferences of your spouse, even the learning style of your spouse. There are churches that still use the KJV and are a little bit harder to understand. Go ahead.
This isn't really. I was just wondering, what denominations did she grow up in, your wife?
So she grew up in the Methodist denomination,
Okay.
And I'm not saying Methodists are
the different flavors across the board.
The specific churches that she was in, I think she would stand up here and say weren't really biblical.
So very conservative Methodist, more.
No, more liberal
More liberal,
Methodist.
okay.
Yeah. Yes.
But I can jump onto that. Like when we started having kids, we went to a Bible preaching church, which generalizations don't do justice. But in a generalization, it was very theory oriented with very little application. The pastor felt that application would be packed out at home, but not on Sunday morning. And what happened is our kids would just basically disengage. And so we were going to church with disengaged family members. And so I think that's when we had to start saying, hey, are we at the right place?
Yeah.
I mean, is it a bad attitude? Am I propagating a bad attitude at home that's causing this? Or is this just not, it's not that was a bad church, it's just that probably wasn't a great place for us. That's how we ended up at Canyon Hills, as we were looking for other churches. I was gone out of the country, Angela came here with the kids. Her comment to me in a text was, you should have seen, all the kids were taking notes. If we're to be like the people of Berea, who are more noble than those of Thessalonica, we're eager to hear the word daily and to go home and see if it's so.
Yeah.
You can't go home and see if it's so if you're disengaged.
Yeah.
You can't go home and see it so if you're not taking notes and actually thinking about the message later on through the week.
Yeah. Excellent point. Does that make sense? Okay. Yeah.
And you will have this discussion.
Yeah.
Several times.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. Yeah. So, first point, worship together as long as you both shall live. Right? That's the first one. Second point, small group or life group. I think there are different types of small groups that you can get involved in for different reasons. So the first one that I have up here is for instruction or learning purposes. Now, most of the time, those aren't groups that you're gonna do life with for a long period of time. But we have adult classes here. So, for instance, starting the first Thursday in April, I'm teaching the Complete Husband class. That would be a form of a small group or a life group. You're going to be in a group with people for at least 8 weeks, talking about what it means to be a husband. Now, there are some classes that are a little bit longer, right? Some of the women's life groups really that are kind of instruction and learning oriented, those go on for longer periods of time, and those women go from study to study to study together, but it really is that time that's their community there, okay? So that's one type of a small group or a life group to consider. Another type of life group that I want you to seriously consider is a mixed group. All right, now that's different than the one coming down below it. But this is more for mentorship and interaction. I think life groups that are the healthiest, this isn't better, that are the healthiest though, are life groups that are mixed. So there's older people in the life group, there's younger people in the life group, there's kids, there's couples with kids, there's couples without kids, there's singles, there's widows. They're all in there together ministering to one another, right? Because I need somebody who has an empty nest at their house as I'm moving towards that, right? Now, I kind of am weird in that I also have a 2-year-old. So, so there's, I can be helpful, though, to people who don't have any kids, but they're getting ready to have kids. But singles, as well, need to be a part of that group. So I want you to I want to encourage you to think about that. I think it's a well-balanced approach. Now, I'm sure if other people were in here, other pastors, they might disagree with me, and that's totally fine. It's not a hill I want to die on. That's just my personal thoughts on that. Okay? But the other kind of life group is more of a peer friendship. Some sociological language here, the same demographic, right? You're in the same spot in life, same age, you're married, no kids, things like that, and that's going to be easier to connect. So there's the positive of that. It's so easy to connect because on Friday nights you're probably going to have the same time available, as opposed to the brand new parents who all of a sudden they're dealing with, we don't have our Friday nights available because Junior now needs our attention, right? So it's going to be easier for you to connect because you're at the same spot in life, somewhat of a similar schedule open, and so you're going to be able to do things a whole lot easier than you would. Can anybody think of another kind of small group or a life group that I haven't mentioned?
Some focus on cause occasionally.
Like
maybe evangelism.
Yeah. So Pastor Corey Mortimer has a life group called Life on Mission. And the main focus of that is missions. So I'd agree with that. And so the draw of that group then is if you're drawn to missions, go there. Because that is the unifying factor there. Yeah, good call. Anybody else? Any other thoughts on different types of... No? Okay. Yeah, I can't. That was about all I could get. And then we've already talked about this last one, though, but minister together, right? Minister together. I think that's, don't need to say anything more on that. But make sure you're striving for that. So that's basically all I've got on community. This has been a little bit of a community in here. When you see, a lot of you go to fourth service, and so when I've seen you walk by, you know where I am. I'm like right behind the music, not the music. What is that? The mixing board area. I'm usually right there with my wife and at least one of my kids, if not more. But this has been a little bit of a community, and so this gives you a taste then for what community could be if you hop in, you keep going year after year. So where do we go from here? Because technically this is the 8th week. You signed up for 8 weeks. We've done 8 weeks. There's one more chapter to go in this book, and that chapter deals with the issue of sex. All right? And so instead of making it extremely uncomfortable in here at times, or just bypassing certain things, what I want to do is save that last chapter for when you meet with me individually. Because everybody is at their own spot with this. Some people, this might be just a train wreck in your history. Some people, this might be something that is just uncharted territory. And so instead of me covering generalities, I want to try and get specific with this. So your homework is to read this chapter, do everything that's listed at the end, and then when we get together, I have a few more things I want to add on to that. And so the question is, when do we get together? And that's where there's a little sign up here. And so there is a chart where you can write down, you can pick a day and a time if you want. If none of those days and times work, or you're getting married before any of these days and times, jot your name down here and we'll make something happen. Okay? So this is just to get the ball rolling. So that's what I want to do with the last chapter. But I don't want you to leave here thinking, man, I was really looking forward to that. I wanted to hear what he had to say. You'll hear what I have to say. It's just when we meet together. Okay? And I think that way it will allow us to be a little bit more open and honest with each other. If this was an all-guys group, that would be one thing. If it was an all-women's group, I wouldn't be leading this discussion, but it would be another thing, right? And so I think that will be helpful to you all as we go through this. But we'll officially wind down our weekly meeting here. And then on that day, when we meet, you'll get a special certificate that says you survived pre-marriage counseling here in Canyon Hill. So, any questions that you have at this point? Or anything that either the book didn't cover that you were hoping to get answers on? Yeah.
I guess I kind of asked you about this last couple weeks, or a couple weeks ago, like where do we go from here? Like we're not married yet, and
yeah.
Some of this stuff doesn't apply at point in time.
Yeah.
So like your suggestion to me was like seek counseling 3 months, 6 months, 9 months.
Oh, so
married, do you know what I mean?
when I answered your question, I was thinking after this, like after I do.
Yes, that's what I'm talking about. Yeah.
Now, are you talking the same thing or after like this class is over?
First year of marriage.
Yeah, for first year of marriage, I would highly encourage, you can reach out to me if you want. I don't want to speak for Brad and Angela, but they might be here too. I do have another couple, Aaron and Bonnie Bouts, who are pre-marriage counselors. You can reach out to me though and say, hey, we want to connect with somebody. We've been married for 3 months, we've been married for 6 months, 9 months, whatever, and talk through some things. Because it's going to become real life. It's kind of, you're anticipating it. This is how I'm hoping it'll go. This is how I'm thinking it'll go. After I do, it will go. Right? And so trying to put some okay, so now what? I was thinking this, it's not really going that way. Or it's not really doing what I thought it would do. Yeah, great. I think making sure that happens.
Yeah, and I would highly encourage it because, I mean, a lot of times you're struggling with something and you're not able to walk through that together.
Yeah.
You know, so either get direct counseling, sit down with an older couple. I mean, it talked about in community here, identifying what, you know, people who have grace and mercy to walk through things. That's why I think Ben talks about the mixed groups, because a lot of times you hit a rock that neither one of you are willing to kind of agree with each other on how you negotiate that sometimes. Yeah. And so having someone outside of that give some new insights or encourage you or pray with you or talk with you through that. And so, yeah, we meet with couples after we've done pre-marriage counseling. It's a lot of fun doing the later ones because I think it's really practical.
Yeah, and that's what we've done too, Corey and I. We invite people over, and so they get to see the chaos of 6 kids and 2 dogs and, you know, dinner and all that other kind of stuff. And so, yeah, I would highly encourage that. Yeah. Anything else? Ready to get married. On that practical note, just know in Washington State, a marriage license is not good until 72 hours after you've purchased it. So if you get married, right, like make sure you have your marriage license. Don't wait till the day before to get it. That would be my one encouragement. Don't wait. But it's not. It's only good for 90 days after you get it. So there's a window there where you don't want to get it now if you don't know when you're getting married. But at the same time, you don't want to wait until 24 hours beforehand to get it.
Did you talk about how to identify a pastor in the church, or has everybody got that sorted out?
No, I haven't. That's great, practical. Yeah, so now that you've had pre-marriage counseling here, any pastor at Canyon Hills is freed up to marry you. So if you don't have a pastor identified, you can email any of them, or you can email me and say, hey, how do I get in touch with so-and-so? And I will definitely put you in touch with that person. So, but just knowing the schedules of the pastors here, the more time you can give them, the more likely they can. It's not that they don't want to, but sometimes their schedules are already maxed out. So, was that what you were thinking of, Brad? Yeah. Okay. Any other questions? Going once? Going twice? All right.
You get your email address and home phone number too, right?
Absolutely, yeah. I'll give you my address, my phone number.
Okay.
Yeah. It's in Tacoma. No, I'm kidding. No, I'm wide open to any of that, really. Yeah. So, all right. Well, let me close this in prayer, and then we're done. Sound good? All right. Gracious Heavenly Father, we come before at the end of our time, and it's hard to believe that 8 weeks has gone by. God, we've covered a lot of ground, and I know for those in here, what we have covered is a little bit future thinking, and it's stuff that they'll be able to put into practice here in a few weeks or months. And so God, I pray that you continue to use all of what we've talked about in their sanctification. God, as they move more in the direction of becoming Christ-like, I pray that you would be honored and that you would be glorified, that they would be ready for the day that they say I do. And God, I know that perfection is not going to be on the other side of I do, but I do pray that they would be ready for the other side of I do. That they would be able to bring you honor and glory as they walk side by side, as they endure suffering side by side. And God, even as they are used by you to point out some sins in the other person, God, may you be honored and glorified through all of it. And so, God, give everybody in here wisdom. I'm not too dumb to think that maybe there might be those in here who need to hit the pause button, to think through things a little bit more. And so, God, if that's the case, I pray that you would give them wisdom, you would give them discernment, you would bring people into their lives who would encourage that. God, for those who are ready, I pray that you would just pave the way, that any last-minute decisions that they have to make would be made in a cooperative way, in a fun way, and that you would be honored and glorified on the day that they say I do. So thank you again for this group, for this time, and we pray all this in Jesus' name. Amen. All right, so I'm going to put this and this pin right here. So if you want to come up here and take a look, feel free to do that.